Hello, everyone. I am delighted to be talking to Michelle Partington, who served for 23 years in the Royal. There we go. In the Royal Air Force. And hello.
Hello,
Very, very nice to meet you.
and you?
I'm just moving myself. I seem to have dropped. There we go. Maybe there. Um, Thank you so much for joining me. And I mean, I guess my first question, as someone who um, was a paramedic on the front line, you served for 23 years with the Royal Air Force. You were the first female paramedic. I'm telling you what you already know, but I'm letting our followers know about you. And you had many tours in the Falklands and Bahrain, and then 3 tours in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So I was kind of, the first place I'm going to, Remembrance Day is a very real day for you. I mean, I'm wondering what it means for you and how significant is it?
So my feelings towards Remembrance shifted, I would say in 2012, following my first medical emergency response tour, which was going out to the point of wounding, and one of the most severe casualties I've ever picked up. I remember his eyes just being black, and he was grey, and he'd lost 3 limbs,
Oh my God.
um, and it was just bizarre. That was one of the ones I remember. But then on the Remembrance in the when they show it on the TV, his picture came up, and it
Oh,
looked completely different to the person that was lying on the floor of the Chinook. And I touched base with his father because I was writing a book, I'm still sort of there now. And I asked permission to discuss his case and things. And what I thought was really nice was that we managed to keep him alive until he'd met his unborn child in a hospital in
oh,
Birmingham. And every time we do Remembrance now, I just think of that, and I think, we do remember from years and years and years and years and years back, but for some people now it's at the forefront of just maybe a couple of years
yeah.
back, you know. And it's
So,
his favourite moment.
yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I imagined, is that for someone like me, it's about the First and Second World War and a kind of distant remembrance of those who fought in the service of our country. But for you, it's very individual stories, families, fathers, partners, parent,
Yeah.
and and this person, it comes to your mind. But I guess he represents many of the people that you saw.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of trauma that we did see out there, and the amount of people we managed to save was a massive blessing. But I'll always remember those that we couldn't save, and you
Yeah.
know, there are particular, including children and things, that'll always come back to me. And one thing that stands out for me is the poppy is still as significant now as it was then, because they were in Flanders Field, but they were also why we were in Afghanistan, and we trotted on many, many poppy fields.
Wow.
So for me, it's bizarre.
And so to sort of, I know that you're willing to talk about your own kind of traumatic experience because on the front line as a paramedic, you experienced overwhelming multiple traumas. Can you tell us a little bit about that, what you experienced and what it did to you?
Yeah, of course. So the role of the medical emergency response team is to be able to send life-saving intensive care treatment to the battlefield, to the point of wounding, where we were able to save more people. But in
So you
doing
were on
that,
a helicopter often or
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Our
yeah.
helicopter was being shot at as we were landing. There was
Whoa.
4 clinicians, 4 special regiment guys that supported us, and obviously the aircrew. And the Chinook isn't that big, but we'd end up sometimes with just 1 casualty, and other times with maybe multi-casualty lifts. And I think at one point we had 13 casualties scattered all around, as much as we can on
Oh
the
my
Chinook.
goodness.
And
Oh,
they varied from shrapnel wounds to blast injuries where, we know there was a couple of quadruple amputees where they lost all 4 limbs. and
Oh
still
my
survived for a
goodness.
short time. But you know, you do all the training to prepare you, all the clinical training and all the exercises and the scenarios, but nothing can prepare you for going out there and actually seeing that trauma in real life, you know, and the smell of the
Nothing.
blood and the dust and the risk of being shot at. And I mean, to be fair, you know, I carried a rifle and a pistol, but I looked like Laura Croft gone wrong. You know what I mean? But in all seriousness, you know, we made ready, and we were at risk of, we were in the middle of a firefight. So
You were
as
under threat
medics,
while
yeah,
you were
yeah,
witnessing incredibly traumatic
yeah,
injuries that,
yeah.
and you did save many lives, and that was the purpose. But of course, you couldn't. Is it so? Are the traumatic memories the memories where you couldn't save the life, or I mean, it doesn't
I think
necessarily
a bit
follow,
of
does it?
both. A bit of both, because I remember various shouts, but one included 6 children who had were playing around and stood on an IED, and 5 of them we couldn't save, and one that we did save was in a horrific condition, and you know, we had to treat them the best we could, and then we had to leave them at the camp gates for the you know, the parents to collect them, because we're not supposed to be, you know, they wouldn't be known if they knew that the Westerns had treated them, then their lives would be put at risk even more. So it was really hard. What also was hard was, and I know this may sound bad, but treating the insurgents, because you know, we do, because we're medics and we treat everybody, but we're treating people that killed the people we probably picked up before them.
So
And
confusing. Oh,
psychologically, oh, it was horrific. So, you know, you've got all those battles going on in your head. Spiritually, because I'm a Christian, I was questioning all sorts of things. So it isn't just seeing the trauma, it's everything around it as well. And, you know, I remember the second tour I did on that, and halfway through, so I was always nervous and scared about going off the back of the helicopter, and we'd make our weapons ready. But I remember halfway through the second tour that I was no longer scared. And that frightened me, because that, in my head, I wasn't actually bothered if I got shot or killed, because we were just
oh,
living a living nightmare, and I just wanted it all to end. So that was the first shock factor of me knowing that I really wasn't very well at all. And I don't know how I got through the rest of that tour, to be fair, but that's how I felt. That was the first proper sign that something was wrong.
wow. And that really is a kind of a wake up, isn't it? That you're suffering so much psychologically that in some ways being dead is is an outcome that you kind of don't care about anymore. You'd almost prefer, because the living with the trauma, and I don't know how it kind of expressed itself in you, because it's different with different people.
Yeah.
Um, how was it? How did you have sleepless nights? Were you constantly jumpy and on
So I
alert?
was, yeah,
Flashbacks?
I was having nightmares, to the point, and you know, I'm not ashamed to say it because it was part of the illness. I wet the bed a couple of times. I was that you're scared within my dreams, and that's somebody at age 40, you know, and it was out of my control. I ended up one night, I woke up and I was in the corner of the room. I don't remember any of that. I was having panic attacks every time I tried to leave the front door. I was jumpy. Loud noises that still get me today is lots of different noises. But I
Fireworks.
knew, not just fireworks, but if it was in such a noisy place. So if I was in a busy shopping centre, say, and there was lots of different noises, but I would still hear if the security had one of those radios that clicked. It doesn't matter how noisy it was in the area. If I heard that, I would respond, because we used to use those radios, and I still react now to fire alarms going off, because if I don't know it's happening, then I feel like I need to, because this was our trigger to go to the helicopter. So the fire alarm would go off and we would run to the helicopter. So if I'm anywhere and a fire alarm goes off without me knowing about it, my heart and my head instantly go back to, I need to get to the helicopter, just for a few seconds. But, you know, it's enough to make you realise that it hasn't quite left you.
Because
And
it's left an indelible mark, hasn't it? In the sense that
it, it has,
trauma has no language, and it makes the past present in that moment, and it's triggered by our senses: sight,
yeah,
sound, touch and smell. So as you say, the fire alarm going off throws you straight back to
yeah.
the Chinook. And
Hmm.
although you've done a lot of the work around trauma, and you've been helped by helpful help for heroes
Mm-hmm.
to manage your trauma. At some level, something, it leaves a mark. There's a wound there that will always be with you.
It has to, but I mean, the good thing about, you know, the training and the therapy that I received is that, you know, you can't delete the memories, but what you can start to deplete is the emotions that attach to them. So I'm able to now talk to them, and my heart still races a little bit, but I can talk now without feeling sick to the stomach or, you know, just getting into a huge anxiety attack. And, you know, I was diagnosed in 2012, and, you know, we're now in 2021. I'm still on medication to keep me going. I still have anxiety. I still struggle sometimes with depression. But what Help for Heroes did, and subsequently the Invictus, is it gave me the fire back in my belly, because I'd given up. I planned to take my own life twice, and that was post-tour. And if I can just try and explain that it's like being in a bubble, but when you try and press it to pop it, it just stretches. It's like a rubber bubble, and you're living in this dark nightmare, and you're trying to, if you've ever dreamt and you've screamed but nobody can hear you, if you've had that dream, it was like that for real, and I was living that, and I just wanted to end it, and I just couldn't live in that space anymore. But thankfully, obviously I didn't, because I'm still here. And the reason I am is because I received a letter from SAFA originally, the Soldiers, Sailors and Air Force, to say they were taking me off their books. And I immediately looked at it and I thought, I didn't even know I was on their books for help. So I was literally on my knees emailing them saying, no, I need your help now. I'm about to give up. And they're on my doorstep the day after. And then they linked me up with support, straight in through with Help for Heroes, who, you know, they have this band of brothers thing. So they're on with you all the time and giving you, you know, places to go, meetups with other veterans and things. And it was nice to have company of people that knew what you were going through. And
it's so alienating, isn't it? You come back, but you bring Afghanistan with you, but
it never
everyone
leaves
who's
you.
around you doesn't know what you're thinking or
No.
feeling or.
No, and when we talk about therapy, it's really important that veterans get therapy from people who know, because I remember when at the start of my trauma training, I was referred to the NHS, and this young girl, bless her heart, must have been only in her early 20s, just qualified, and she sat in front of me and she said, so what sort of trauma work do you need us to work on? And I just told her about this call out for these 6 children, and her jaw dropped. She had
She couldn't cope
absolutely
with
no
it.
idea. No. And she said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to help you. So that's why it's so vital that Help for Heroes and that exist, because they know, you know, and then through the power of sport, I got the fire back in my belly that was missing, and gave me that inkling to think, do you know what, maybe I've got something to live for, and all, and I can move forward. And I have done. And, you know, I competed in the games. I chose. Go on, sorry. What?
I said, that's amazing. I mean, it sounds like both getting the treatment, and I'd love to know what treatment you had, whether it was EMDR or what treatment you had, but also being with your community, being with your tribe, and having a goal to head for, like with Invictus, a sport.
Yeah.
I love the idea of it fire in your belly, and it gives you hope, it gives you life again when you really were living in death, it sounded like.
Well, it gave me the idea that I actually wanted to take my life as far as I could, rather than end my life and take my life in general. So, but I had various different amounts of therapy. So it was EMDR. They did try the light one with me first, following the LED light. I just fell asleep. Just gone. So they tried the tapping method and things, and that seemed to work really well. And there was desensitization.
I do the tapping one.
Yeah, the tapping is really, really good. So that worked. I then had anger management, because my tolerance levels were extremely low, and I started getting angry about things with the military, with the Afghans, with myself, with everybody.
With life,
So,
with
yeah,
cues, with.
yeah. And
Do you
then I
still get angry? Someone was asking, are you more easily ignited to anger than before?
my medication helps. But,
Yeah.
and that may be a flippant comment, but it absolutely does, because I know if I don't
Keeps
take
you.
it, yeah, my tolerance levels are lower than before, and I have to really check myself. I pause now before I say something, because I need to make sure it's measured. My responses are measured rather than outbursts. So yeah, I I do still have them, but not as much. But I had some cat therapy as well. I don't know if you were familiar with that, when you so I
Well,
had some
dog
cat.
therapy, I didn't know about cats.
Yeah, so I had cat therapy, which is cognitive analytical, and I did CBT as well. So there was a whole range of different things, and I think it's really important with people with PTSD and various other things that it's not one quick fix, because there's a lot of underlying things and a lot of underlying symptoms that need to be dealt with. So yeah, and that worked, and then once we got through the therapy
When,
stages, it got me out of my house.
yeah.
Well,
When you said cat therapy, I wasn't thinking of cognitive analytic therapy. I was thinking about animals, and that's when I said dogs. But
uh,
you're right. Everybody is internally is different on the inside as they look on the outside. So you may have had a diagnosis of PTSD, which is a kind of universal diagnosis if you have trauma, but how you, Michelle, individually can find a way of integrating the memories, processing the memories, taking the distress out of your body so that you will react, but not at kind of code 10, like a fire alarm, is
yeah.
very individually
It
yours.
is. You know, the thing that for me is a lot of people treat the condition, but you have to treat the individual with the condition, because, as you say, we all respond differently. We've all got different symptoms. Not everybody gets angry. Not everybody turns to booze. Not everybody gets upset. We're all different in how we respond and how we recover. And some people recover quickly than others, and some people may never recover. Um, but the difference is you learn to live with it, and that's recovery.
Yeah. And it sounds like you really are learning to live with it. I don't know, you probably know this, but what research shows now is that women are twice as likely in a threatening environment to suffer from PTSD as men. So that women have kind of 8 to 10% trauma from a traumatic event, and yours was multiple traumas. I don't think anyone could have gone through what you went through and not have trauma. And
Yeah.
men's is sort of 4 to 5%. And I don't really understand why that is, but it's also true that, which is why I'm so glad you got help, is that most people with trauma are very reluctant to get help because there's this awful pervasive shame that goes with it, and also this sort of self-destruct.
Yeah. And I think it depends on how the trauma exhibits itself. So if it's from domestic abuse, say, or child abuse, or, you know, not everything's from combat, it's from attacks and things. People are so embarrassed about it. But the earlier you get help for the trauma, the more likely
Yes.
you are to get over it. And never, you know, there are times where people can get over PTSD completely if it's dealt with quick enough. But I
Yeah.
think it's the fear factor, isn't it, of facing it. And you have to face the memories of what happened. And I think that's what some people could find difficult. And I certainly did. I felt sick going through some of the stories, and, you know, they're saying, well, tell me again and tell me again and tell me again. And, you know, I remember once wanting to punch my therapist in the face, which isn't, I wouldn't know, and I didn't do it, but I was so worked up at having to keep relive it, but it worked, you know, and it desensitized the emotion attached to it, and my anxiety levels relaxed each time. So it does
Because
work.
it's so complicated, isn't it? Because me as your therapist, I mean, I had a client this week, it was very much the same. I am asking you to go back to the worst memory you have ever had and work with me to process it.
Yeah.
And of course, everything in your being wants to run and do anything not to go back and face it, because our instinct is to cut it off and avoid it. But
Yeah.
of course, that is what keeps perpetuating it.
It does.
And as you say, I mean, I'm so pleased that you say the sooner you get an intervention, the sooner you get help, the better your outcome, the longer, because although our neural pathways are plastic, the longer we have the traumatic loops, the more they get embedded and the harder it is to kind of take the distress
Yeah.
out of the body.
Yeah, and I wish I'd have put my hand up earlier, because I had recognised the signs on the second tour that something was wrong, but I didn't put my hand up because I was too ashamed and too embarrassed, because I was part of a team of 4. Well, there was 16 altogether with the aircrew and the regiment, but the 4 clinicians, and we all had our own roles to do, and, you know, it puts extra pressure, and then we need to trust each other, and if one of them is failing, like I was, you know, that trust may go, or they're going to be more concerned about how I am as well as, and I couldn't put that on them. but actually it would have taken a bigger person to actually put the hand up and say they were struggling.
Yeah. So
So,
it's courage to own it, isn't it?
yes.
But
Yeah.
do you think part of it was that because you were one of the, well, you were the first frontline woman as a paramedic, and you didn't want to be seen as weak as a woman?
So I was the first frontline one with the RAF regiment. There's a lot of women that went on the front line before me in different roles, but yeah, I had a lot to prove because they didn't want me to go out and do this role. They said a woman couldn't do it, and they also said, "Oh, we'd have to arrange this, we'd have to do that, we'd have to do that." And I said, "No, no, no, no. At least let me go out and prove it." Because, and I was a little bit blunt. I said, "It doesn't matter what you've got between your legs. It's what you've got up here that matters, and in your heart, and that you
Good for you.
can, if you can do something, if you're determined enough and you believe it, you can absolutely do anything you want to do." And that was actually, that tour was the making of who I was, and that's when I found who I was as a person. So yeah, but I did have to fight for it, and I had to prove myself, but I did that pretty quickly, so I soon settled in.
Yeah,
But yeah, the pressure was on a little bit.
so someone's asking, Hilliam Eastwood is asking, Band for Brothers includes women, is that right?
Yeah, so there's Band of Brothers is for everybody. It was only called Band of Brothers because initially it was just males that were out in combat. But now obviously females are going out in combat situations as well now. So yeah, but they've also got a band of sisters for families of. So the band of brothers is the people that are in the military, and then the band of sisters is for people partnered or friends of. So families can get involved with it as well. They're really, really good at that. But somebody once asked me if I was offended by the title of it, and I said no, because we're all brothers in arms at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what the title is. It's the meaning behind it that matters.
And so if someone's listening to you now who has experienced trauma, and it may not be from combat, but it may be from combat, as someone who's suffered it and is now living and engaged with life, having really not wanted to live, so you got as ill as it's possible to get with trauma, and through Help for Heroes, through yourself and through Invictus, you find, I guess, meaning again and fire in your belly, purpose to live.
Yeah.
What would have helped you to get help earlier? What could have somebody said to you
I
that would
think
have?
it was more that I should have said to myself, get help initially. But equally, I think people need to know that there is a safe place to talk, and there should be no fear or shame in putting your hand up, and know that when you do put your hand up, the support is going to be there. And sometimes it's lacking, which is why it's so important that these charities are there, because there's a delay in treatment. But the sooner you put your hand up, and I would say, don't leave it like I did, because you may not have to be down as far down the road as I am, and many
So
others
tell us
are.
the charities. So Help for Heroes, I'll put a link in the IG. Help for
Yeah.
Heroes.
And the Invictus Games Foundation and
Yeah.
SAFA as well. All three of them, because they've all got different parts to play. And I was very blessed to be supported by all of them in their different ways. But I tell you what, the Invictus Games was from all. I've never been a sports person. And when I saw the email from Help for Heroes that came through from the sports recovery side that said, why don't you apply for the Invictus Games? I laughed and deleted it because I was always last during the games, during the trainings and everything. And then I thought, okay, I'll do it. And I chose indoor rowing because it was a sit-down job,
Did
right?
you? Yeah.
One of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And I was sick after every training session and sometimes during. I used to have a bucket next to me. And then I chose powerlifting as well. And I knew I was never going to medal. I've never been a sports person. But for me, the medal was getting back on my feet and getting that fire back in my belly. And I say to anybody, don't look too far ahead. Just look at the here and now and just face every day and every challenge as it comes. And just a small step. Don't say, I'm going to go to therapy and after 6 weeks I'm going to be okay. Because in reality, sometimes, and the majority of the time, you're not. But just take each day and just have little small goals to compete is what I would say to anybody.
Small wins. And so if people aren't in the military, is to find something where you can belong, something, it sounds like in the training for you and kind of being with other people, that would, so it could be a book club, it could be a choir, it could be
Absolutely
anything where
anything.
you're a member of a group of people where you've got a joint endeavor and something
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be sport, anything. Just finding it, and if you don't have an interest, or you've done whatever and you're fed up of it, find something else, find a new hobby, or just go walking with friends. Go join a
Yeah,
walking group and things. Because even I've got a puppy now, bless her, and we go for walks, and I've met so many people in the park. Just go and chat to people, and
yeah.
just get out of the house is what I would say. Don't make your house your prison, because the more you avoid going out, the less you're going to want to go out.
That is a very profound piece of advice, because your mind is your prison, and then you make your home your prison, and then of course it's self-perpetuating. So can we end talking about your lovely puppy, who is now more of a dog than a puppy, and how? Let's have a look. Hello. Oh my goodness. What's she called?
So she's called Elsie, and she's absolutely shattered because she's just done a first training session with our trainer. So
Amazing.
she just, sorry?
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So she's shattered. She's just come in and she's collapsed. So yeah, job done.
But also how comforting dogs are. They're so
Oh,
powerful because they always pleased to see you. They're not judging you. They're always affectionate.
she's
And
beautiful. I'm in love again. And I had a therapy dog before, and she came to the training camps with me, and she passed away. And yeah, I'm in love again. She's amazing, and she keeps me going, and she gets me outside as well. But when my
that's a
tolerance
win.
levels were really low, I would never have got a puppy.
No,
But yeah, she's beautiful. You can tell by my smile. I'm
I
so
can
happy
tell.
this is beautiful.
And
Yeah,
laughing. I mean, when you were kind of really traumatized and in the kind of most biggest depth of your suffering, it probably would have been incredibly difficult to laugh. But I can see you're laughing and you seem very alive. So although you are changed by what has happened, you haven't been broken by what has happened. You have grown through it. And
yeah, because I'm now in control of it,
yeah,
whereas before it was controlling me. So, and it's, as you said earlier, it's about taking ownership of it and knowing that actually you still can live with it. And any mental illness, you can live with it if you just learn what it does, take control of it, put it on its lead, and move forward. If it's going to come with you, it's going to come with you, but you've got control of it.
um, that is a wonderful way to end. And as Halima Eastwood said, Lara Croft gone wrong made me laugh. I guess humor and dark humor and being able to laugh at yourself through the worst times is also a
Yes,
big thing. And the last
massively.
thing that I was thinking was that trauma trumps logic. So you
Mm.
can never kind of talk logic yourself out of it. You have to get the treatment,
Yeah.
because you can't will yourself, you can't shape it, you have to get help.
Absolutely, and as soon as you can.
And Dorothy Owens is saying put it on its lead. That's brilliant. So thank you so much, Michelle,
Absolute
and
pleasure.
thank you for Help for Heroes and Invictus and all the organizations that have helped you and people that have suffered like you.
Oh,
And
pleasure. And
lovely to
thanks
meet you.
everybody for listening as well. Lovely to meet
Yeah,
you, and I hope we can do some work again sometime.
me too. And thank you everyone listening. And yes, I hope we meet again sometime. And goodbye, Elsie. Yeah, it's a good place to end. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.
Yeah.